Recognizing the member for North Vancouver, Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this opportunity to address the members of this House on Budget 22-23. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to acknowledge that I'm currently working and staying on the unceded land of the Songhees, Esquimalt and Lekwungen-speaking people, and that North Vancouver, Seymour, my riding, where I live, work and learn, is in the Coast Salish territory, specifically the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with these Indigenous communities. I would also like to thank Ireland Bell-Smith, caucus intern, and Jacob Hoffman, grade 10 work experience student in my constituency office, for their contributions to this discussion. I think, Madam Speaker, that British Columbia's story will always reflect somehow on the years that were spent in the COVID pandemic. The challenges that were faced and compounded by climatic disasters and an overdose crisis that has daily deaths. Throughout this time and going forward, the people of the province rely on the government through representation and advocacy to meet the challenges head-on, ideally in a proactive fashion. This, Madam Speaker, is what Budget 22-23 will do, through recognizing what is needed and preparing to meet those needs in a broad spectrum of ways. I and my community are looking for the same things that people and communities throughout BC are looking for: a home, food on the table, a meaningful job, and the ability to spend time with my friends and loved ones. All of these things need to be affordable, reliable, and safe. This budget looks at strengthening our society overall, promoting positive growth in the economy going forward, all the while ensuring that the environment is being cared for and remediated to deal with climate change. Additionally, Madam Speaker, in keeping with the government's commitment to UNDRIP, the Indigenous leaders and communities throughout the province continue to be integrated in an ongoing component of planning and implementation of legislative process. In my throne speech, Madam Speaker, I laid out how the cycle of support works at municipal, provincial, and federal levels, starting with a high-level outline of the aspirations, needs, and priorities of the people of British Columbia, as brought forward through their duly elected representatives, which are reflected in the throne speech, and then reviewing the resource plan that will be used to address those priorities, which is where we are at now with the release of Budget 2022. Madam Speaker, how can anyone argue against investing in people with the intention of improving day-to-day life now and in the future? We all want to finish up with COVID, sort ourselves out, and resume a life that is not overshadowed by the specter of an out-of-control disease. Things that we used to be able to predict, like Christmas, Easter, Diwali, Hanukkah, and other traditions with specific time frames, celebrations, foods, and activities. We want to be able to do those things again, freely. And we will, in time. This budget helps us to move towards that time because it's aimed at supporting people where they are at currently and toward a stronger and better future. At the core of this budget is care for people. Even through the pandemic, British Columbians have found ways to stay engaged with their communities and support each other. This budget aims to amplify that resilience by providing British Columbians with the services, care, and opportunities they need to continue to move forward with strength. The investments outlined in Budget 2022 will empower British Columbians through strengthening critical public services, making them more accessible, inclusive, and affordable to people. This budget recognizes what people care about and invests in people and their families by prioritizing childcare support services, healthcare services, mental health services, and housing, and climate change management. As a nurse, a wife, and a parent, I deeply understand the importance of accessible and affordable quality care and what that means for those we hold closest to us. This budget prioritizes the quality care in many ways. From introducing new healthcare facilities across the province to improving access to affordable and culturally based inclusive childcare, this budget puts the health and wellness of British Columbians first. Whether people need urgent care, primary care, cancer treatment, or mental health and addiction support, these services are becoming more accessible and deliverable with this budget. In North Vancouver, we are very fortunate to be watching as our community hospital becomes updated with a new acute tower that will provide better patient care units with improved infection control and current technologies implemented. Paul Myers, a local businessman, contributed $25 million to this project to get it to the point that it could be started and go forward. It also has the capacity to establish one-stop health care with outpatient clinic space and room for specialists. Our Car 22 service hours went from 2 days a week to 5 days a week, where the police now have a clinician available to go with them to calls that need that specialized mental health skills which may well change the trajectory for an individual and for the people around them. An urgent primary care centre is now available as an alternative to the emergency room, and the Foundry is open to youth seeking mental health support. These are all things that have been established over the past few years, so why reference when talking about Budget 2022? Because the budget every year provides the foundation to start or continue projects and initiatives that make life better for everyone. The Coalition of Childcare Advocates of British Columbia say that the budget puts $10 a day childcare back on track. Not only will continued reductions in childcare fees empower families across the province, but by providing more licensed childcare spaces and increasing the training seats for early childhood educators, parents can trust that affordable, accessible, and quality childcare is here for them. Budget 22 also progresses towards enhanced support for children with neurodiverse and other needs by creating accessible family connection centres within our communities. This adopts an inclusive needs-based approach for these children and provides parents with assurance that their children can receive care and support that works for them when they need it while moving towards a definitive diagnosis. Understanding the needs of our youth is essential to strengthening our society. Empowering our youth through engagement, active listening, and instilling inclusive support services tailored to their needs are all essential components of building a stronger BC together. With these values in mind, I am confident in the investments outlined in Budget 2022 that focus on our youth. The decisions will empower our youth today and for years to come. As a former foster parent, I've been exposed to the needs of many vulnerable youth, and providing this type of care has allowed me to understand just how impactful support to youth in foster care really is. I have seen kids who have aged out of the care system and are at a loss as to how to transition fully into the life of an adult. This can lead to serious repercussions such as homelessness, predation of the individual, substance use or abuse, suicidality, not to mention the loss of forward momentum that is so very important to establishing self, whether through work experience, post-secondary education, travel, or other means. All of these things are not easily achieved by 17-year-olds, let alone those who no longer have a family base. Madam Speaker, out of these many proactive budgets that the budget includes, improving support to youth in care up to the age 27 truly emphasizes the values of our government. A government that puts people first and ensures that support is available for those who need it most. As it is for youth in care, the risk of homelessness is a reality for many individuals with complex care needs. Again, proactively, this budget includes funding for new rent supplements and new complex care sites throughout the province. Key investments that advance stability and offer security and inclusive care to those that need it. More than anything, we care about the safe and quality living of our constituents. This month, I plan to attend the opening of a new apartment building in my riding that has been put up alongside a recently renovated, subsidized seniors building that is owned and operated by the Kiwanis. The new building will be subsidized, providing 106 homes for low and moderate income older adults. Kiwanis has put up a number of buildings on the North Shore over many years, striving to meet the needs of our seniors and others. They work in partnership with our government. This affordable housing option is just one of the many new affordable and quality living spaces being set to provide more accessible, stable, and permanent housing for British Columbians. These ventures are particularly brilliant because they also facilitate opportunities for enhanced partnerships that include support and infrastructure attuned with the needs of the community. Everybody deals with housing needs, and these empowering housing investments will provide the people of our province with the support, certainty, and confidence they need to cultivate more stable and affordable futures. Budget 22 also reflects our government's commitment to lasting and meaningful reconciliation through building relationships and prioritizing investments that support Indigenous people and their communities. These commitments to respectful reconciliation will be realized throughout investment that makes space for active listening, proactive action, and partnership with Indigenous communities and leaders. Partnership in the work of the new Declaration Act Secretariat, where funding is going towards coordination of reconciliation efforts that will ensure all provincial laws align with the UN Declaration. Partnership with communities to continue the work to combat racism and address the systemic discriminatory barriers that are still disproportionately impact Indigenous people in the justice system, the healthcare system, the child welfare system, and the education system, to name a few. And partnership with the First Nations Health Authority to establish 15 First Nations primary care centres that focus on Indigenous health priorities, again, putting safe, inclusive, and accessible care for people at the forefront so that the Indigenous people can receive culturally safe services and supports they need when and where they need it. These investments will allow for further meaningful consultation and collaboration with our Indigenous partners, providing continued space for the recognition, honour, and respect of Indigenous voices, their distinct languages, experiences, legal traditions, cultures, practices, and stories. This budget reflects our dedication as a province to embrace these voices, integrate them into the development of the social institutions, and create space and opportunity for safe and inclusive care that does not tolerate anti-Indigenous racism or discrimination of any kind. The new Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship has been established, with a clear mandate of working with Indigenous governments and organizations in developing new visions and policies for land, water and resource management. Part of this work will be to ensure these policies are consistent with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Delivering thousands of new licensed childcare spaces in the next 7 years will provide families with assurances that they are able to select the quality care that works for them. It also facilitates more jobs and employment in the broad range of vocations that are predicted to be available in the coming years. Parents can make decisions about work, school, and life, knowing that their children have a safe, affordable, and appropriate place to learn and thrive. Of course, we always also need early childhood educators to work in these daycares and to pay them a living wage so that they can continue in that work. Moving childcare into the Education Ministry strengthens the commitment to the full spectrum of support for child and youth. This will also speak to our province's need for skilled trades workers throughout our economic sectors. As a strong society, we depend on skilled trade workers to construct our communities, work in our industries, and keep them going day after day. I am proud of the proactive approaches this budget provides towards strengthening and expanding our labour force here in British Columbia. There's an important step that has been taken to restore funding that was withdrawn long ago. Re-establishing critical funding for sexual assault service centres across BC will provide much-needed and ongoing support for the courageous survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Crucially, this funding makes critical crisis response, counselling, reporting mechanisms, and proactive and medical services more available and accessible to survivors, and ensures that they can access consistent, safe, inclusive, and empowering supports for their mental and physical well-being. Madam Speaker, in talking to the survivor of a sexual assault, I heard the following, and these are her words. To be perfectly blunt about the benefits of sexual assault centres, without them, many of us wouldn't be here today. More and more sexual assault survivors are speaking up because someone before them had the courage to speak up, and it gives hope that people are listening. However, the current system cannot keep up with the demand. Wait lists are so long to see a counsellor that some are waiting years for support or never get it. Survivors need counsellors to talk about trauma. They need a safe place to come together and feel supported. Of 100 police-reported sexual assaults, 43% are charged, 21% go to trial, and 12% result in conviction. 100% of survivors should be able to access a sexual assault centre as part of their healing. Sexual assault remains on the rise in Canada and in BC. Many survivors have no desire to engage in a long and emotionally draining legal battle before the courts. If they are lucky enough to get to the court, sexual assault centres will sometimes have a court handler who will go and explain everything going on in the court process and help wipe away tears while the survivor is reliving the most horrific moment in detail out loud to a room of complete strangers. These big emotions, the anger, the sadness, and the frustration don't go away at the end of the day. Survivors carry that with them everywhere they go. Trauma centres and counsellors help survivors manage these emotions and a lifetime of triggers from everyday things that most people won't even think of. Survivors need to feel supported in helping navigate the trauma they have endured. Sometimes the trauma comes up after months or years after the incident and comes up in unexpected ways, affecting relationships, lifestyle, work, physical, and mental health. Trauma centres help to navigate this process. When these centres aren't functioning or available, survivors have limited options to turn to. Mental health continues to suffer. Many survivors struggle with depression, anxiety, low self-worth and self-esteem, and sometimes substance issues. They need to feel safe and protected. Sexual assault centres provide that service. That is what a sexual assault survivor spoke to me about. Budget 22 speaks to the resourcing of sexual assault centres across the province that will be there to provide that safe, protected place that survivors can go to for initial care and ongoing support. Again, ensuring the right care is available at the right time in the right place, not months or years later, or if at all. Sexual assault centres can provide the specialized care that survivors need in the moment, rather than the generalized chaos of an emergency department that may or may not have the time, capacity, or expertise to provide compassionate care, while also securing and transmitting evidence of a crime. The mental health of British Columbians is not only important, but it's an absolute priority. Mental health struggles and needs have been amplified by the pandemic. However, it is an area that was long neglected. The precarious nature of the toxic drug crisis and the poison drug supply in our province is severe, and tackling this crisis requires us to look at the foundation of the struggles that British Columbians are experiencing and providing proactive responses. To name a few, investments in stable housing, fighting the climate crisis, improving wages and job security, bettering our healthcare system, and improving access to affordable childcare are fundamental actions that will ultimately support the quality of life and mental health of British Columbians. Without a doubt, the concern and care for people's mental health guides the choices made by this government. And as a result, mental health services and care options are being expanded for individuals of all ages. For post-secondary students, the province has integrated mental health supports online for free with services such as Here to Talk, which provides free virtual counselling and support for the mental health challenges that face our students. The budget also continues to invest in the mental health of youth and adults through Pathway to Hope, a step that prioritizes access to affordable counselling, addiction services, child development supports, culturally safe services, and more. The message is clear. Social investments outlined in this budget will make people's lives better and create a better and stronger future by enhancing accessibility, prioritizing inclusivity, and acting proactively. This budget maintains our government's focus on care for the people of British Columbia and will allow individuals, families, and communities to move forward with strength and confidence. Madam Speaker, BC has done well relative to other parts of the country in terms of our economy throughout the pandemic. This budget continues to invest in the people of this province in a whole variety of ways, including providing ongoing support to ride out COVID, creating climate-resilient and responsive mechanisms that can anticipate, mitigate, and support recovery from natural disasters, investing in BC-based businesses that are creating our future, and ensuring that accessible post-secondary education and training is available to ensure that we have a strong, effective workforce. All of this and more, including a strong, ongoing commitment to meeting our mission targets. Meaningful reconciliation is woven throughout the fabric and work of this government through health, emergency management, education, justice, communications, industry, natural resource management, and many other areas identified in ongoing discussions with Indigenous communities. Investments will be made in the areas of life sciences, agriculture, environmental stewardship, clean technology, apprenticeships and skills trades training. Healthcare providers to staff our long-term care, assisted living, and home care services to ensure our more vulnerable get the care they need when and where they need it. Crafting community benefit agreements for key capital projects to increase employment opportunities for underrepresented groups and enhance the construction workforce. Continuing to support adult education with dedicated funds, as well as maintaining the tuition-free adult literacy training programs. Re-establishing trade certification in 10 of the electrical, mechanical, and automotive trades. These are some of the areas that Budget 22 supports. Madam Speaker, in my riding, there are several well-known places that a cell phone won't pick up, Wi-Fi won't work, and it doesn't matter. If you have data or not, you can't access it. However, it's easy to move back to a fully connected space and carry on with what you want to do. In a variety of areas of our province, that lack of connectivity is yet to be resolved, but it will be. Further communications connections will be established over the next 5 years to more than 280 communities, getting high-speed internet in place to enhance healthcare access, increase education choices, facilitate working remotely, and access the virtual marketplace. This budget maintains the momentum of the 10-year housing plan with the goal of affordable housing being built and available. Working with nonprofit housing providers to construct mixed-income housing and supporting low-cost financing are two strategies that will continue to add to the housing stock. In spite of the effects of the last 2 years in pandemic mode, BC still has economic sectors that are growing. Life sciences, over 2,000 companies doing research and making discoveries, employing over 18,000 people, is continuing to be a viable employment and economic opportunity. Substantial grants are invested in their work. Mining continues to play an active role in resource development using the stringent lens of environmental care and climate management. Our tourism industry, much of which pivoted during the pandemic to provide service to British Columbia while the tourists were not coming, continues to receive recovery support, as do many of the non-profit organizations, as well as the arts and culture sector, all of which have struggled significantly to remain viable. And I believe we are all happy to see the allocation of funds towards the safe restart of fairs, festivals, and events. I am certainly looking forward to attending the Vernon Tattoo in July this year, as I also anticipate being able to attend many of the local events in my riding. In support of the work toward managing old growth and revitalizing the forest management practices, Budget 22 has earmarked funds to transition affected workers and communities. Available strategies such as short-term employment, education and skills training, partnerships that create jobs reflected in a diversified economy, or community infrastructure jobs. There will also be retirement bridging programs established. Again, all of this work centers around people and providing support where and when it's needed. Madam Speaker, the environment continues to be an urgent and diverse concern, one which has garnered agreement from all sides that we need to do more in our efforts to remediate past damage and slow the trajectory of climate change. I have the good fortune to have a grade 10 student from one of the local high schools who is doing work experience in my office. When asked what his thoughts were, Jacob was very clear, and I quote, "We are headed into a future of climate change that will only ever get worse. We can diminish this by rapidly changing to meet the goals we set for ourselves and the goals given to us by leading scientists around the world. Of course, we're not alone in this battle, but we can and must be prepared for what we face in our near future and the great efforts we must undertake to be prepared for what's ahead in the long term. We know that climate disasters like the ones we faced last winter and last summer are only going to get worse, so we must do more." End quote. Grade 10. Jacob, thank you. We saw more fires and massive flooding with significant damage to livelihoods, properties, infrastructure, and supply chains. The heat dome took the lives of vulnerable people. New high and low temperature records were set. Climate change is here, it's real, and it behooves all of us to respond in a concentrated effort to reduce our emissions and carbon footprint, both individually and collectively. The low-carbon economy investment to expand the low-carbon fuel standard and emission cap on natural gas utilities, both are significant strategies that are included in Budget 22. A variety of initiatives will be going into play to support cleaner transportation methods, energy-efficient buildings, and industry decarbonization. Additionally, emission reductions will be enhanced in communities and land-based activities through initiatives in partnership with municipalities, forestry management, and agricultural activities. Increased capacity to reduce, reuse, and recycle through further investments in the circular economy strategy. And investing in clean tech, innovative technologies and opportunities. All of these actions, and they are all actions, will bring BC closer to the goals of climate change management. The other thing that this budget speaks to is the protection of people and their communities from future climate-related disasters. This focus is on supporting communities and rebuilding critical infrastructure so that we are better prepared for future events, designating both operating and capital funds for disaster prevention, response, and recovery to ensure that support is available when and where it is needed. This includes moving the BC Wildfire Service to a year-round model that will focus on prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery as a continuous cycle. Funding for a climate preparedness and adaptation strategy that will include, but not be limited to, expansion of climate monitoring, establishing climate resilience initiatives, developing extreme heat response plans, and expanding the river forecast and provincial floodplain mapping program. Madam Speaker, I see the budget as a comprehensive document that speaks to the needs of a population that want to recover so much of what has been lost over the last 2 years. Not only recover, but begin the move forward into a future that offers the opportunity of increased prosperity, prosperity that we can all share. So, I fully support Budget 22 and thank all those involved for the thought, time, and collaboration that was taken to create and present it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.